Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is our fourth composer chat that we are presenting this spring. In this series, we invite you, the audience, to meet and interact with composers and their music through performance and conversation. Today's composer chat, Tamboreño, features three-time Grammy-nominated composer Miguel del Águila. We will also chat with Blue on Blue recording studio owner Marc Webster. He is the audio and video engineer for the new music video of Miguel's work we will premiere today. 5x5 continues to find new ways to bring the music and the people who make that music to you. We have a wonderful creative and technical team behind the scenes making these programs possible, but we ask for your patience with us if you experience any technical bumps. We are grateful for support from the Genesee Valley Council on the Arts, the Rochester Community Foundation, Rochester Institute of Technology Performing Arts, Wegmans, Genesee Valley Orchestra and Chorus, the Eastman Community Music School, and individual donors who have been so generous these past months. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our Composer Chats host, Evan Meccarello. Evan directs 4 orchestras in New York and Connecticut and leads a contemporary classical ensemble for students at the Hochstein School. Evan?
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon and welcome to our fourth composer chat. Today we feature Miguel del Águila and the premiere of 5x5's music video for his piece Tamboreño. We are so pleased to also share this space with Marc Webster, who created that animation for us that will be premiered today. We're delighted to have our live audience in Zoom with us, as well as more of you watching on Facebook Live, and the stream can be found at 5by5music.com. Thanks for being here. 5x5 advises everyone listening, if you can, to grab a pair of headphones for the music that will come up later in the program. And it's always nice to hear the full details, if you're able to do it that way. 3-time Grammy-nominated American composer Miguel de Águila was born in Uruguay. In over 130 works that combine drama, driving rhythms, and nostalgic nods to his South American roots, he has established himself among the most distinctive and highly regarded composers of his generation. He was honored with 3 Latin Grammy nominations, the Kennedy Center Freedom Award, and many other international awards. His music has international presence with performances by over 100 orchestras, thousands of ensembles, 51 CD recordings, and festivals worldwide. New and upcoming releases of his works include CDs by Norwegian Radio Orchestra, Louisiana Philharmonic, Augusta Symphony, Quartetto Latinoamericano, and the Eroica Trio. Miguel, thank you for joining us today, and welcome to our Composer Chat.
Thank you, Evan. A pleasure to be here.
We're so grateful to have you, and thanks for signing in. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Seattle on a usually gray day, a little rainy.
That's great. And are you doing some music work out there? Or
No, I live here. This
ah,
is my home.
okay. When we last spoke, you were, I believe, down in Augusta working on that performance that you had
Yeah,
coming.
that's actually for the CD you mentioned, Augusta Symphony. It's a CD with all my new work for orchestra. And this concert was supposed to be done the week before the pandemic started. So it was already postponed twice, and thank God we got to finally do it. A regular concert, we did a recording, and then the concert with audience and the entire orchestra. It was really the official opening for me of live orchestra concerts again. So
Congratulations and thank you. And we're so pleased that 5x5 has been a part of the online presence in your work with this new piece, new arrangement of a piece you've written for originally for quintet, I believe, piano quintet, yes?
Mhm.
Uh, could you tell us, before we get into Tamboreño specifically, could you tell us a little bit about where you are coming from musically and personally as a composer?
Not in relation to the piece, but you mean in general, where I'm.
In general, yeah.
Okay, and you give me a minute to explain my entire life, right?
Yeah, no, like more than that. But yeah, if,
Well,
what,
I'm sorry.
sorry, what have you been hearing? What was your musical environment?
I was born in Uruguay in South America, and I lived there 20 years, the first 20 years of my life before I came to the US, where I studied at San Francisco Conservatory. And then I studied in Vienna, in Austria, where I lived 10 years. And then I moved back in 92 to California and then to Seattle. So my education in Uruguay, which I think was probably the best education I got. My teachers were in their 70s and 80s when I was a little kid, which means they were born in the 19th century. And so I feel their education was very strict, and it was in a way very old fashioned. And, some of my teachers, then they knew Debussy and Saint-Saëns, and they were not best friends, but they've known these people as contemporaries sometimes. So I think I was very lucky to get firsthand that education. My training was strictly classical, and it was as a pianist and as a composer. As I was younger, I wanted to do what I do since before I knew what it was. I was a little 3-year-old and I knew what I wanted to be, a pianist who writes music. So I didn't know the distinction until I was later older and found out that those are two separate professions. I started writing music, and that's pretty much at certain times in my life, I wanted to be I worked more as a pianist, other times more as a composer, and the past probably 30, 40 years, I've been more of a composer.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing the very condensed version. You're a pianist, and I understand you still play some now. Is that right? Even though composition is your main focus, of
Yeah,
course.
I love playing piano. I hate practicing. That's the problem. And piano is it's like boxing or something like that. You need your technique to keep it. It's a set of muscles that normally don't develop if you're not playing piano. So because I don't practice, when I get, and my music is it makes you sweat, right? And lots of notes in it. So if I'm to play my music in 3 months, I would have to start today doing technique, which takes me more time than learning the music. But because I let it go so much, but I do love performing, and I think every composer should perform anything because it's the connection to reality. You can write on paper a million crazy things, but if they're not bound to the actual performance reality of things, um, you run the risk of writing lots of unplayable music or music that upsets every performer, whoever tries to play it, right? So plus I do love the physicality of performing, the sweating, the adrenaline, and the audience. It's really the real world. And I view composing as sort of the imaginary world. Everything is in your head, right?
How do these two worlds meet in your process? This world of the imaginary and composition, and the performing. Is piano a part of your composition process? Do you sit at a desk away from all instruments in the imaginary world? How do those two worlds interact for you?
It depends. If I'm writing a piece for piano, uh, a lot of it happens on the piano because at least the way I write, I very often, if it's a piece for piano, I trust where my fingers go. Your fingers are directed by your subconscious to do things when you are writing music. So there is more time at the piano. If I'm writing for an ensemble or for orchestra, there is very little time at the piano. There is mainly just checking a few chords or a few sounds, or but most of my composing happens anytime, anywhere, waiting for a red light to change or 1 in the morning before I fall asleep. There is no composing is um, like a machine, an animal you have in your head, and you cannot really control it. When you get an idea, it comes. Sometimes it comes when somebody's talking and you are ignoring them, and they keep talking, and they don't know that you're composing in the back of your head or music is ringing. So, um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's about.
Yes. A lot of composers speak about this, the idea of the melodies running through, or the harmonies, or whatever materials running through. And um, I've heard them describe it as a birthing process in one way or another. And I can imagine how when one is working things out, that you have to take every opportunity you can. Has uh, do you feel that you've had time now where you, in the last, say, year and a half where we've been shut in, do you feel like you've that's affected your process in a good way? Have you had more time to compose, or has it been additional stress and these things and maybe not so great for composing?
I think for what we talked before, that I really missed the performance part of it. I think it happened to many of us that some of the enthusiasm and the motivation, we struggle with that during the pandemic, because you just don't see concerts anymore. You don't see your friend musicians. You don't, for a long time we were isolated, right? So I do struggled during this time with the motivation, and writing music. My music is sort of a mirror of my experiences, or anybody's experiences, right? So if you live your life in a bubble, there is not much to write except boring music or Mahler second movements, of long, long, long emptiness and depression. So, and I don't like to write that. Music has to show every emotion. So, yes, I think this has been um, difficult, even though I've written music. But when concerts resume and things go back to normal, there will be again that energy. And I think we all musicians know that it's the energy of playing together that's irreplaceable.
Absolutely. Let's shift to speak a little bit about this piece, Tamboreño. Can you tell us a little bit about that title, and give us a window into what's going on in this book?
Yeah, well, tamboreño is a word I made up. It's an adjective, right? So of the word tambor. Tambor, it's a almost international word. I think the origins are somewhere in Hindu language, but it means drum. It's a generic word for drum in Spanish and in many languages. And that gives you an idea. This piece for me is a piece about drums. It's a piece about rhythm. And the theme of it, maybe you want me to explain more later, but it is a warming up, a ceremony of warming up the skins of the drums around the fire, a fire around which the drummers sit and play, and it's performed in South America and Uruguay and Brazil, in many events related to Carnival, but events that have a ritual, a religious also purpose, before a procession of, or a parade, you would call it, right? Um, so this is actually, the entire piece is the warming up and maybe the actual music. And this is something that really happens in these events, that at first you start um, tensing or tempering these drums on the fire, and everything sounds dry and hollow because the skins are loose, right? So slowly as people start warming up their drums, they also start improvising, and then spontaneously those improvisations start um, working together. They start becoming the music, right? Without any music, actually, it's all each one playing whatever they want. And it's a fascinating event where you see music spontaneously being created without anybody writing it or controlling it or directing it. And of course, I write every single note that's played. I don't, I'm a composer. I don't like people improvising on my music. But this is pretty much the theme of this piece. It's just that transition between the purpose, purposeful playing for um, warming up the drums to the beginning of the music, which probably turns into music in the last few bars, right?
Yes, there's this sort of primordial misterioso quality in that stretched through
Yes,
the majority of the work, even as the rhythms go, right? And so
yeah.
this build of the material and the energy, right?
Also, yes. And when I write, I'm not a visual person. I can go to a room 10 times and then I get out of the room and you ask me what color were the walls. I have no idea. But for some reason, musically is visual to me. I really visualize music, and I cannot write music if I don't have a visual idea of it. So uh, in this case, it's night. I see it like a summer night, and you can see at the beginning. And then I think it comes through in the music when the firelight, because all of a sudden there is this. Um, I think the piano brings this harmony, and then the high part of the ensemble plays this very ethereal melody. It's almost not a melody. There are very few melodies here. Everything is rhythm, but you sort of catch this effect of the fire, um, and then they're all around drumming, and then nearby are, because there are always dancers in these processions, right? The dancers are practicing their steps to whatever music is spontaneously happening, and at some point they all decide it's time to keep going, so they start and they march away.
Yes. It's worth mentioning that Five by Five and the original ensemble you wrote this for, uh, other than the piano, has no percussion instruments. So here's a piece about drumming without drums. It's a little interesting. Do you perceive the piano? Is the piano the drummer, or are they all the drummers? Do you see that as a percussion instrument?
Are you asking me in this piece specifically or in general?
Either way, I suppose. But I suppose for this piece, I know there's definitely some drumming figures in
Yes.
keyboard, but there's everyone plays rhythms, of course.
Well, remember the mechanism of playing piano is, what plays a piano is a hammer. I think the word hammer is a little associated with drumming something, right? You're hammering it. And we tend to forget that. I think, at least for my taste, piano playing has emphasized the lyrical aspects of the piano. And we know nowadays that many works by Mozart and Haydn, they were purely rhythmical. And we make them also lyric, but we know that Mozart's piano was not that lyrical. And many of the passages he wrote are much more rhythmical than we play them nowadays. So I do have, if you come play on my piano, you will realize why I chose it. It's very bright, it's very clear sound. The low strings don't ring for hours like on those big Bösendorfers. Uh, the and it's very percussive, and I love that aspect of the piano. Of course, I'm biased because I love rhythm. I think is the most important part of music in many ways. And when having a lot of rhythm and stopping it and then bringing a lyrical passage, I think it makes it much more expressive because lyricism is really um, comes from imitating the voice, the human voice, right? And a balance of both is very important in music, not necessarily in the same piece, but you need to have the rhythm to stop it. And there's no secret of mine. Look at Bach or all this music. It was divided in two, recitative, and then comes the rhythmic part, or Vivaldi. I mean, there is no Vivaldi without pure rhythm, right?
Yes, things spooling up and releasing, and yeah, absolutely. Since we're talking about the musical materials and the instruments, um, I I wonder how the change of instrumentation. This piece was originally written for piano quintet, so piano and strings, I presume, and the addition of woodwinds, a flute and a clarinet in this arrangement. How did that affect things for you? I've heard that you do a lot of revising in your music. You said in another interview that sometimes pieces never end for you, that you're going back and looking at them. How did adding woodwinds, flute, and clarinet change this piece for you, if at all?
I go beyond saying my pieces never end. My music, my works flow from one to the next one. For me, it's difficult to know when I finish writing one word and work and when the new one begins, because to me it's like a continuum. Even if the previous piece was for solo flute and the next one is for 20 tubas, for me it's a continuum because I'm the one writing it, and it's part of my music is sort of the life track, the soundtrack of my life in many ways. So it's very hard sometimes to separate them and saying, this is the end of this piece. No more of this piece can be present on the next one. I can't do that, right? Which is, I know it's a little strange, but that's how it works. Now, I changed more than that because for your version, we have also an electric bass and guitar, right? So everything is different. And I love um, changing instrumentation and changing instruments because it's really, to me, it's not an arrangement. I don't consider arranging um, because that implies you are um, fixing something, right? To me, it's composing. Every time you change something, you compose again because you have to make a piece work, first of all, on the new instrumentation, but also as you change the instrument, you are changing the meaning of the piece because every instrument says and means different things. You cannot expect um, electric guitar to replace a viola just by changing the notes. It has a totally new meaning. So you have to incorporate. It's like you have a conversation, and all of a sudden, even though the theme of the conversation is the weather, right? But all of a sudden, you invite three new people who have no idea what the theme, the topic is. So those three new people are going to come to the conversation with their own topics, and you have to be you have to work to make that conversation make sense with those three new people and their three new topics
Yes.
without losing the essence of what the conversation was about.
Yes, each instrument is laden with its own history and connotation and its own world, really. So that makes a lot of sense as you make a new version of something. Uh, Adding to this complexity is media, which we have for this performance coming up. I'd like to now invite the video artist, Marc Webster, who created the animation, to join us. Marc Webster is a composer and recording engineer, and he's a significant collaborator with Five by Five, sometimes referred to by the players as the sixth member of the ensemble. His performance experience covers a range of styles, including as piano soloist, a keyboardist for a rock band, jazz music, and blues artist collaborator. His commissions have included the Gibson Maine Quartet and Eastman Youth String Orchestra, and he owns Blue on Blue Recording Studio. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us, and thank you
Thanks,
for
Evan.
the collaboration. Uh, we're talking about the layers of meaning that go into what instruments are playing, and really in digital presentation, the video is one of the instruments. Could you tell us a little bit about the concept of the video for Tamboreño and how this came to pass?
Sure. Whenever I start a video, I always end up. I always start from the musical side. There's lots of different ways to make a video, but uh, the what works for me is I'm basically a musician first, and I happen to make videos. So I see the videos from a musician's point of view. So when I start a video, the first thing I'll do is I'll get the score. Hopefully I can chat with the composer. In this case, I had the wonderful pleasure of being able to chat with Miguel. Um, and you learn things like some of the things Miguel's been sharing right now. Like he shared, oh, I envisioned this idea of like the carnival and the drummers warming up their instruments, around a campfire. And of course, so those thoughts get into your head and you say, okay, well, somehow in one way or another, those would be really wonderful things to be able to convey. So you start thinking of visual ways that we could represent musicians around a campfire and a parade and things like that. Basically, the video grows out of the music, and the emotions that I feel when I hear the music, just try to visualize, and I basically visualize those emotions that I'm feeling as I enjoy the music.
And for this presentation, you've updated, or not updated, you've changed the location, from a vision of Latin American ritual to a Rochester ritual, a musical gathering and dance here in our city of Rochester.
Right. Well, they always say, write what you know. I've never actually been to Uruguay, so but I've lived a long time here in Rochester, so it seemed like the right thing to do was like, well, let's make a Rochester version of this, and we actually have a hill that I can see off the porch of my house, Cobb's Hill, and I imagined that we were up on Cobb's Hill around a campfire and we're warming up our instruments, and you can see the city down below in the background, and then eventually, like Miguel said, we gather up and we start marching down towards the city. So that led to this idea of, oh, well, if you're going to imagine a city, well, let's make it Rochester City. So let's make the buildings and the streets and all the sites and landmarks, let's make them Rochester.
Yeah, that's very neat. And folks watching who live here will recognize all kinds of landmarks and different people. And you've also included more than just the musicians. You've included some of the community. There was a request put out for people who wanted to be in the video to send in video of themselves. So you have a whole crowd of folks in there that I think is really wonderful. I wanted to take a moment to invite everyone watching to submit questions. You can type into the chat either on Facebook or in Zoom, wherever you're watching, and we'd love to relay some audience questions to Miguel or to Mark and the musicians who will be joining us in just a few minutes. So you can feel free to type into the chat if you have questions about the music or the video that we're going to be watching in just a little while. Mark, you use this technique of video within video really well, and I think people will really feel the sort of immersive aspect of that. But this recording was done all separately, correct?
Correct, right. Yeah. When the pandemic first hit, of course, we had like several videos that were all in various stages of pre-concept. And suddenly we realized that there was just going to be no way that we could do them as we imagined them. And so you start thinking, well, what can we do? One thing in particular is that a lot of the video style that I bring, the camera is an important actor in the video. I think that comes because I actually video in a lot of different genres, and in genres like pop or hip hop or things like that. Often the camera is just like another artist in the video. And so if the artist is being smooth, well, the camera will be very smooth. If the artist is dancing, well, then the camera will be dancing a little bit. And of course, you can't really do that if everything is being recorded pandemic style, where everybody is recording in their own individual living rooms. And it's like, well, what are we going to do style-wise here? And somehow out of that came this idea that, well, if we brought everybody's videos in, they could record at their own places, they could do the video in their own living rooms or wherever, but we could bring them together and create some kind of a virtual set with a virtual camera. Well, then I can still do all that stylistic thing with the virtual camera. And in fact, I can actually do more things with the virtual camera, because you can do things with a virtual camera that you could never do with a real life camera. So with that realization, it's like, oh, wait, we have new territory to explore, things we've never tried before. Let's go see what we can do. And so that's actually become kind of the story, the arc of this past year, is exploring this whole idea of creating a virtual set with musicians, and creating virtual cameras with them and seeing what can happen. And I have to hand it to the musicians of 5x5. I mean, everything that you hear today was recorded by them, and everything that you see, all of the musicians, it was all videoed by themselves. All I did was kind of mix it all together and pull it together. So and over the past year, they've gotten really wonderful, from like simple videos to like pretty soon we were adding lights, and then we were doing like 2-point lighting with colored gels and everything. And you'll see that in the video. So their video and recording, they've all become video artists and recording artists, recording engineers and video engineers. So hats off to the musicians.
Really wonderful. And it's what's especially great about this is instead of worrying about what we can't do, it's actually leaning into the medium and saying, okay, now we can use our camera work to have more intimate looks at musicians while they're playing, to show you views that you would never be able to see otherwise in a live performance. So leaning into the strengths of the medium has been an important part of this. At this point, I would love to invite the members of 5x5 to turn on their cameras and join us. In addition to Laura Lentz, who we heard from at the top of the program, we have Marcy Bacon, clarinet, Sungmin Shin, electric guitar, Eric Polinek, bass, and Haeyeon Jun, piano. Hello, 5x5. Great to see you.
Hi, everybody.
I wanted to ask something as a general question to everyone in the group about the recording process. Would you like to share a little bit about what it felt like to record this piece, to make the video for this piece, maybe something about Tamboreño that excited or inspired you to do something in particular with your recording or video work? What can you share something about the process?
I think this, everyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first piece we've ever recorded where we didn't play it in a live setting somewhere before. So we got the music, we couldn't be all in the same room at all, and we had to create a recording, and which was a pretty unique challenge. We did spend several rehearsals looking at the score together, going measure by measure over everyone's ideas, what they were thinking phrasing-wise, how we were going to accomplish certain dynamics and certain articulations, what kind of balance we wanted to hear. Do we want more of this instrument over top of the others? And so there was a lot of discussion to make that happen. And I think the one thing that helped us is we've been playing together for quite a while now, so we know everyone's playing pretty intimately, and we trust each other a lot musically. And so it's nice to know, like, okay, if I see this figure and Laura is saying she's going to be playing it this way, I already have that sound stored in my head somewhere, so I know what she's talking about. So I think that helps out a lot. And then as far as when we got to the recording, I found that one of the biggest challenges I had is we recorded the piano first, and then I went second. And there were some things as I started recording where I changed my interpretation based on what Haeyun had just done recording. There was a couple notes where I was playing them a little bit longer, and it's the day of the recording. I did a couple takes where I played them shorter instead, and then that really seemed to work out well. So it was neat to have those little moments of learning, and I could definitely take that to other projects too. So I enjoyed that.
Leon, you're the pianist for Five by Five, and in this piece, it starts out with some effects. Maybe you could share a little bit about what the beginning of this piece is like for you. You do a little drumming kind of rhythmic sound near the opening on this repeated note. I have always had trouble on piano when I have to do the same note on the same key in a rhythmic area. What can you sort of tell us a little bit how you set the stage at the beginning of this piece?
Yeah, I love this beginning because it feels like I can imagine I lift the heavy curtain and then I see what's going on. So that kind of um, image I can see it. And it's fun to play inside of the piano. I can drag. I can like I feel like I'm becoming a like harpist. So it was fun to play inside of the string. And the repeating notes, yes, that's tricky to play well. Um, I tried rotating fingers on one note, and it didn't work. And I decided to play with just one finger, actually two fingers of on one key,
Oh,
like
yes.
that. So I can, yes, so I can control better for the soft sound. And then I play the note um, before the hammer actually goes down. So I can play faster and produce the softer sound. Yes.
Yeah, so it's almost like, and I see Miguel nodding his head as a fellow pianist about this. It's very interesting, right? Because um, when I looked at the score before doing the piece, I said, "Wow, that's I wonder if." And then I saw the dynamic marking, and that's when I knew what it was about because uh, it was about the actual maybe surface touch
Could
also.
I
Right?
could I jump in here and add something?
Yeah.
Uh, this is an advantage when you guys play music from composers who didn't die yet. Uh, when you're playing Chopin on the piano, you cannot ask him what his positions were, his fingering, his technique. You don't know. But pianists need to figure it out, or else you can't perform some of those difficult etudes. But in modern music, if the composer is there, you can ask the composer. I love what Heian said because I would have never thought of rotating fingers on those repeated notes, and that's why they are not that fast because they were all each one hammered separately, and that's it took her a while to figure that out, and I would have told you. So it's very important when you are interpreting music to figure out what the composer wanted technically or how the composer played it, because that will help you technically to play it easier than in another way. And maybe composers should write more uh, on the music itself, things like that. Although, for piano playing, you seldom find the directions play all with the same finger or not, because we tend to leave it up to the performer.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and what a treasure to have you here, with living. I mean, that we can be in touch, and I think that's the whole reason Five by Five is around, is because we want to create those connections between living people and living traditions. Would someone else from the ensemble like to share an experience with this piece?
I'll just say, since we have done a number of these in-home recordings previously, I had a certain expectation that each one is going to be easier than the last. And I have to say, this one was not easier. It was the same difficulty. Every piece has its own challenges that it brings. And so, I was obsessing and practicing the fast 16th notes that I have to play in a certain spot. And that's the part that I nailed on the first take, would you believe? And the other stuff, you just play the same note over and over. It's really hard to get that exactly the way you want it. So I took a million years to just do dut, 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 the way that I wanted. So it was a surprising challenge, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, but it was quite a process.
Yeah, the way recording in a studio focuses the mind and the attention in a really profoundly different way, I find, from performing live. Uh, Miguel, have you done recordings yourself, either as conductor or pianist? Of course, in recording sessions with the orchestras, you're of course there, listening and giving feedback.
Yes, like I told the Augusta Symphony people when was that? Yesterday, or so somebody from the orchestra, they worked so hard recording this, and I said, well, you guys, and then they come and congratulate me, and I said, you guys did all the job. This guy, meaning the conductor, he moves his hands, and I just sit in that chair and criticize, right? It's easier really to be present at a recording. It's very hard to be a sound engineer because you need to hear everything. And once you have your headphones on, you hear absolutely everything because you have a mic on every performer. It's like a perfect spy of who's playing a wrong note. And I've recorded, if you notice, the last, not the last, but before the last, the two recent CDs, one is my piano music, where I'm playing myself my piano music, and the other is music for clarinet and piano, which I recorded with the clarinetist, every single piece. And I don't know, recording is a different animal than performing because you have to go for accuracy. You can't abandon yourself like you do in a performance. And the fact that you are sometimes jumping in the middle of a piece, in the middle of the most emotional part of the piece, means you have to get yourself emotionally ready for that part. It's like you are filming a soap opera and you have to die over and over and over, and then you have to kiss the other person, in this love scene over and over and over until it's done. So it loses, I think, a bit of the emotional spontaneity, but it gains accuracy. And I think you guys agree with this. When you are a professional musician, you know how to do it. And it's something we are really, when you record, you are really like an actor in many ways, because you're reenacting emotionally also where you are at that moment in a piece, even if you have to take many takes of it. You cannot say, okay, this time I do it faster, this time I do it slower, this time. It has to be consistent. And it's easy to be consistent for 10 minutes. It's not easy to be consistent for 8 hours when you are stuck in a recording studio.
Yes. I'll jump in here with a question from Facebook Live. One of our audience members writes, knowing that the parts of the piece were recorded separately, how did that affect the way you heard the piece? And the audience member asks, especially with regard to the lack of the physicality of being there. Do you hear recorded music differently? I certainly do. I wonder what you think about that.
Is that for me?
Yes, or anyone else too.
I don't want to hear the ideal recording that's mixed in studio with musicians not together. What I want to hear in the recording is that I don't hear any difference, right? And that's very hard to do. It's very hard to record really in a bubble because you are just hearing things on headphones and playing to that. And a good mix, a good recording made that way is one in which you cannot hear that it has been recorded like that, that every musician reacts to one another. I don't know how audiences see us playing music, but there is a connection that goes beyond anything anybody could ever figure out. You're playing in the middle of the music. All you have to do is just look at the corner of the eye to the person next to you, and just that 1 second, look at their faces, look at their expression. There is a connection that it's almost extra natural. It's magical almost. In that second, that look of the other person tells you exactly what to interpret, what to go for, how to play it, and that feeds constantly in our performers from musician to musician, right? And again, it's nothing you can define. It's the way it is, right? So that you don't have that element when you are recording separately, and that's the challenge. But you know, I've been surprised. Probably one of the things I learned during the pandemic is that classical musicians were way too conservative when it comes to mistrusting technology, right? We want everything live, and we want everything acoustic. You know, you would never, to this day, you cannot tell a viola player or a guitar player in a concerto, would you want to pick up the sound a little? It's like an immoral thing you're asking, right?
Such a difficult. I'm
yeah.
sorry to break in for you, Miguel, because we're nearing the end of our session. It's time for us, I think, to watch the video now, and I want to invite anyone who's watching to still submit a couple questions. We might be able to take one or two at the end of our session, and we're so grateful, Miguel, for spending some time with us today. Mark, thank you for your ambitious video. And at this time, we will enjoy the premiere of 5x5's performance, Marc Webster's video, and Miguel de Águila's music, Tamboreño. All right, and there we have it. If you're on our Zoom, you can show some silent appreciation if you'd like to turn on your video for a second. We love seeing.
And how you doing, Mark? That was amazing. You did a wonderful job. All you guys did a wonderful job. That was amazing.
Hey, thanks, Fresh.
Amazing, man. Yeah.
Thank you. It's great to see all of you. Well, there's not too much more to say, I think, after watching that. But if you'd like to offer some more comments, someone said was really taken by the video. We got some wonderful comments coming in. Someone asked, this is maybe Mark, you can quickly answer this, about the video process. An audience member asks, are all the video elements in the frame linked in a virtual 3D space together? And I think the answer is yes.
Yes, it is. Yes. I mean, the way I made everything, I went out with my camera, took pictures of all the buildings in Rochester, and then turned them into 3D models. I used Blender, the 3D software application. And yes, there's a gigantic virtual set within Blender for all of the various scenes.
Wonderful.
And then you just work your camera motion and away you go, just like in the real world, except it's all virtual. Get your lighting.
For sure. For sure.
I would just like to add a comment here. What Miguel was trying to put his finger on earlier about the connection between the musicians when we perform in person versus being in a video. For me, I had a significant emotional reaction just now watching this with everybody that was not present when I was recording the music or the video, but now I feel like I have shared this experience with all of you in a new way, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of this experience. Thank you, everybody involved.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
I wanted to just say thank you to Miguel for the amazing music, for inspiring us to do all this. It's thanks to you and for becoming connected with you. And so we appreciate you sharing Tamboreño with us back in, what was it, August, May? I can't remember. It was sometime last year. And we bounced around ideas and with all of 5x5. But thank you for your wonderful music. Wonderful.
Thank you, guys. You did an amazing job. And Mark, thank you very much. The work you did on the video is amazing. And you know, music is just dots on a piece of paper if it's not performed. And when you perform it, you bring it to life. And that's what you guys did. And you brought it to life, each one separately, and but at the end you just create really an amazing performance. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. The members of 5x5 have worked so hard to put all of this together, and Miguel and Mark, we're really grateful for you spending your time with us today. It's great to get to know you better. We hope to see you and hear you soon in other wonderful projects. 5x5 is grateful to all of you watching at home. You can further support music with in-person and at-home performances by going to 5by5music.com and clicking support. Miguel, do you have a website you'd like to share or send people to?
Yes, you're welcome to visit my website. It's my name, migueldelaguila.com, no spaces. Also, you can see all my music there, links to recordings, and there is a contact page, and it goes directly to my email. If you want just to have any questions or send comments, feel free to do that. I'll be happy to answer them.
We really appreciate your storytelling and your sharing with us today. 5by5 would ask that our audience consider helping communities with less access to the internet by donating to Rochester-based initiatives that address the digital divide. These are Action for a Better Community and the Children's Institute. You can find those links at fivebyfivemusic.com and in the chat. Finally, we would like to invite everyone to the final event of this web video series, featuring a very special performance that is open to your participation. On Sunday, June 6th, we will have an open participatory performance experience of Tuning Meditation by Pauline Oliveros. No musical background is necessary to participate in this piece. We will all gather on Zoom and experience it together. Tuning meditation is part of Oliveros' practice of deep listening, an art that engages both heart and mind, focus and generosity. Join 5x5 along with Lynn Boucher, board chair of the national organization Yoga Service Collective, and Mona Segetolaswamy, host and producer on WXXI Classical 91.5. That's Sunday, June 6th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. 5x5 is Laura Lentz, Marcy Bacon, Sungmin Shin, Eric Polanek, and Haeyeon Jun. Our technical team is Terry Bacon and Marc Webster, with assistance from Mona Segetolaswamy. I'm Evan Macarello. Thanks for listening.